Welcome to our roundtable on verifiable credentials, trust and truth in an AI-enabled talent acquisition market. Okay, so welcome everyone. I want to start by short introductions to everyone. So if we can all go around and each introduce yourself, your organization, and how you relate to the topic of our conversation today. Jean-Marc?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jean-Marc Laouché. I lead the Korn Ferry Institute. Korn Ferry is a management consulting firm focusing on organization and human performance. And my specific role is about leading the Korn Ferry research and development area of our business. I'm also a member of the Velocity Network Foundation since the very beginning.
Sid?
Thanks. Hi, all. My name is Sid Bhattacharya. I lead the part of SAP. I lead the demo build team and AI portfolio for our HR line of business called SuccessFactors. It's one of the leading SaaS products. We deal with core HR, payroll, a lot of solutions for businesses of different sizes. Very much involved with Velocity Network Foundation, just like Jean-Marc, as a board member. And excited to be on the call here. It's a topic that is passionate to all of us, and I'm looking forward to having a good discussion with everybody around verifiable credentials and talent acquisitions and the changing world with AI.
Thank you, Sid. And Glenn?
Yeah, hello, I'm Glenn Cathy. I work for Randstad, which is the world's largest HR services company. I work in the advisory group, and we have a big focus on AI and how that's impacting the world of work. It also involves helping companies move to skill-based organizations and enhancing candidate and employee experiences. And we're also a long-standing board member of the Velocity Network Foundation.
Thank you. And I am Eitan Bernstein. I'm one of the co-founders of the Velocity Network Foundation, and I lead our ecosystem team, which is responsible for bringing organizations on board and working with them to help deploy and adopt the Velocity Network. So our conversation today is around the intersection of artificial intelligence and verifiable credentials and talent acquisition. Let's start with the artificial intelligence side of this before we introduce the verifiable credentials. And there's a lot of conversation about the impact of AI on talent, on HR in general, and talent acquisition specifically. Probably a lot of hype. Could you each in turn say a few words about what you're really experiencing, you and your customers are experiencing around AI? What is the positive impact and opportunity that's already creating or you're seeing? And maybe already start touching on, but where are some of the challenges that AI is bringing your organization or your customers? Jean-Marc, we'll start with you.
Okay. So yes, you cannot get into any client conversation almost at any level without talking about AI. It's in everybody's mind. I think that the ChatGPT and Copilot revolution that started about 2 years ago is really impacting everyone. I mean, wow, this is amazing. You have an assistant in your pocket able to answer many questions and most of the questions. So everybody is investing and trying to understand what does it mean beyond my personal utilization to my work. And talent acquisition is not foreign to this process and to this inquisitive question. So what we see AI being applied everywhere in the value chain of hiring people, both internally and externally. Just because of the very nature of AI. AI is about getting big quantities of data, ideally pretty labeled, therefore you can recognize it, and use algorithms to make sense, to identify patterns, and then based on those patterns, create new data, new predictive data, saying, oh, this is the answer to your questions based on past knowledge. Finding a person for a job is fit for purpose. Finally, we need someone who has a history, therefore plenty of data, personality, and background. And then is this person could be fit for my job? And the job also can be defined in terms of data, culture, tasks to be done, outcome which is expected. And AI has the ability to match both those things. Of course, we had processes before, people doing interviews or some type of questionnaires and exercises and simulations. What AI brings is the ability to do personalized search at scale, because of the power of the data and the ability of the algorithms. So it's impacting everyone from, do I have the right candidate, or how do I have a chatbot talking to the candidate, so the candidate believes and feels that this is a really personalized and unique type of process for her or for him. We'll go deeper into that, but it's really transforming the way business is going to be done in talent acquisition and beyond.
And Glenn, to add to that, I mean, how are you guys experiencing the impact of AI on talent acquisition? And are you already starting to see any challenges or concerns that this is bringing?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say if I were to touch upon the positives first, we have this massively powerful capability that's now democratized because everybody can use it for free. So everybody has almost like a free professional resume writer to help them prepare resumes and cover letters. You could argue that you could use these technologies for on-demand coaching and interview prep, which is some positive use cases. Companies are leveraging it to provide candidates and applicants with 24/7 improved experiences throughout the whole funnel, greater communicability. As Jean-Marc mentioned, better matching for sure, and then also internal mobility. But I'd have to say on the negative side, people are always looking for opportunities to leverage any technology that comes out. And there are several technologies that allow people to mass apply to jobs, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands, without actually reviewing those applications. Also, we've seen some studies that have shown that AI tends to, even if it's not asked to, embellish resumes. So kind of exaggerate people's experience and credentials. That's definitely on the negative side. And if you see a bunch of people using ChatGPT or similar solutions to help them customize their resume for job descriptions, you're going to get what we've seen and some of our clients are seeing as well as somewhat of a homogenization, because they're all starting to look similar because they're all customized using some of the same solutions to customize to the same jobs. And there are also situations where people are starting to get crafty and use AI to help them complete assessments and answer interview questions. And some companies haven't already established, safe and acceptable use policies. So that starts to open up the can of worms around, what is fair. And, is it fair to compare one person who's using AI to go through the process and someone else who thinks that's cheating, so they don't? It definitely raises some concerns.
And Sid, you're embedding AI across many of the product suite and solutions at SAP and SuccessFactors. Can you say a word about how AI is impacting your solutions and what positives you're creating, but also what new challenges that's bringing?
Absolutely. Just to add on to what Glenn and Jean-Marc just said, I completely agree. Think of me as customer zero for a lot of our product suite. So what we do is we have to activate these features via value-based and customer-based journeys. So one of the things I've noticed talking to a lot of partners and customers in the talent acquisition space, obviously it's everybody's looking at a few KPIs really. When you're doing hiring at scale, you want to reduce the time it takes to fill a position. And then you want to increase the quality of the candidates that are coming in, right? That is, you don't want to compromise either one of them. And it becomes a challenge to kind of illustrate a few points here. If you think about Glenn talked about embellishing resumes. That's absolutely true, and that's happening. That's the unintended consequences of having some of these productivity tools available at your fingertips as an employee, as a manager, and so on. One of the things I've noticed talking to folks is people underestimate how quickly some of this technology is being adopted within their companies. So it's a little bit of a change management that people have to go through to say we have to come to terms with this technology and learn to embrace it. And the second thing, obviously, with ethics and compliance and some guardrails in place, that is absolutely needed. As we all know, hallucinations are very real, and the last thing you want is miss out on candidates who are actually worthy because, because of an embellished resume kind of coming in or bubbling up the chain. So these are some very real problems that were not there 2 years prior, or maybe not as prevalent, that are now there. And essentially we are looking, as SAP and also working with Velocity and technologies like this, is to look at an alternate version of saying, AI has solved a lot of problems, but it has created a lot of new problems that we did not have before. So what is it that we can do? How can we make this a net positive change as opposed to being just a zero-sum game of now new problems are being manufactured? And one of the things to think about, and for everybody to know, is that a lot of what we are also going through is a skills transformation across different companies of different scale. So you will see new skills coming in, and you'll see a complete need for companies to manage a holistic view of their employees, the talent pool that they have. It's no longer just limited to the hard and soft skills that you have had on your resumes or, through your job experience. It's a lot more valuable to know about personality traits and all that. So companies are focusing attention on creating a more holistic view and looking at at skills transformation. This is where I think there's a potential where AI can be used for good, in the sense of creating really complete profiles as opposed to just narrowing it based on what someone claims on their resume. So I think that net is, I think there's a lot of traction in talent acquisition in the recruiting space, as expected. But I would say most of the companies are cautiously optimistic of this technology, and that's what we are helping them kind of transform and take this journey.
Thank you. And so I want to build on what you guys were all saying. So on one hand, we're giving great tools both for the individuals to better apply, better represent themselves. We're giving tools to the recruiting teams, talent acquisition professionals, to better communicate with individuals on a personal basis, better match them to jobs. But you all mentioned the challenge of embellishment, and there's always been embellishments and lying in resumes. That's not new, but the ability to do it so professionally. So being able to match a description to a requirement of a job at scale. And as Glenn, you mentioned, Barry, at hundreds or thousands of job opportunities at once, is much, much easier to do. And we're already hearing a lot of our organizations and members and participants in the network report a significantly higher level of resumes that look great, but then once investigated or going through the process, that there's gaps there. And this is where verifiable credentials is. So we talked about AI. Now let's introduce this concept of verifiable credentials, which obviously is not a silver bullet for all the challenges that AI bring, but maybe possibly can address some of the challenges around fraud, around trust, around truth in the information that AI uses and acquires. So for those who are not acquainted at all with verifiable credentials, maybe just a word that verifiable credentials is a set of data standards, technologies. Basically, like we think of email as a format, right? Or an HTML page as a format. Verifiable credentials are a data format. But what's unique about the data format is it enables individuals to hold digital proof of who they are, what they know, what they've studied, what licenses and certifications, what work experiences and so on they have, in a way that they control, they own, and anyone can trust. So they're issued by the trusted source. So when you graduate from university, your education institution will issue you a verifiable credential. When you complete a job at a company, that employer will issue that verifiable credential. Or when you complete an assessment or a skill test, you could get a verifiable credential that you as an individual all hold and control and can share with anyone under your privacy requirements. And anyone receiving those can verify them and know that they are correct for sure, haven't been tampered with, and haven't been revoked. So they completely change the ability of transfer of information. And without getting into too much technical detail of how this works, you guys are all involved in thinking about how verifiable credentials will impact the world of work and how they offset some of the challenges that AI we just talked about brings. So maybe, Glenn, can you give your initial thoughts about how does this AI world meet this need for trust and truth, and where verifiable credentials fit in there?
Sure. Yeah, and I first want to just, I guess, double click a little bit on a point that you made that we haven't really highlighted too much already is the self-sovereign identity element of this, and the fact that people would own their own data, which is a fundamental shift, moving away from centralized data repositories and putting the power back in the people to be able to move from one company to the next and actually take their verified skills from one company to the next, which is fascinating when you think about it, because in today's current world, people gain skills and experiences, and then once they leave a company and try to go somewhere else, they have to self-report, and then the burden then shifts to the new employer to try to figure out, is this all accurate? What part of this is real? And where verifiable credentials come in is they just allow companies to actually focus on the people who are genuinely qualified by being able to quickly verify key qualifications, licenses, education, skills, experiences. This helps people meet people, identify people that meet the role requirements, and it reduces time for sure. And I think the primary benefit, the way I look at it, is it really just is a signal amongst the noise. It enables more fair candidate assessments and establishes a foundation of trust in a world where it's much easier now today, and it's only going to start growing, people using AI more creatively to represent themselves. And we have to figure out, how do we empower people to also fairly represent themselves so they can feel that this is now a fair process. I'm being fairly compared to other people based on verifiable credentials, rather than my true credentials being compared to embellished credentials, totally self-reported.
Jean-Marc, other thoughts on that? Verifiable credentials, where they meet AI in this world of challenges?
Yes, I mean, we highlighted the risk, like people faking their CVs or using AI to answer questionnaires and assessments. They are real, and we need to tackle them. But I would like to maybe look a little bit further and try to imagine what would be a world operating fully with AI. We already have an element of that when companies create a talent marketplace internally. Therefore, they said all the open jobs are available to everyone, and let's match and make people access those jobs more easily. We could imagine an external talent marketplace where it would be very easy for people to say, oh, there is this project that requires those skills. I happen to have those skills. I can apply and then get the job or get the opportunity, as long as the employer, whoever is going to provide it, is sure that this person has the skills. So we are getting into a world where everything is changing very fast. And Sid mentioned that earlier. Skills are becoming more complex and fragmented and difficult to spot and to identify and to validate. We need a stamp of quality, a proof. Like when you buy food and you want organic food, you have a stamp, this is organic, or something like that. What do we tell about people that they are really good for data analytics or for marketing segmentation or other type of capabilities or skills that they have? This is where verifiable credentials are so critical. They provide at a low cost a validation that my credentials, my education, my professional experience, my personality, even the hobbies that I have done and what is defining what I like in life is true, because they've been validated by somebody else that can certify, yes, this person have done it, and therefore he or she qualifies for the opportunity that you are providing.
And Sid, other thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think this is just not belabor on the same point that Jean-Marc and Glenn mentioned, but there are a few things that I have noticed with customers of different sizes. And again, I think a lot of times we tend to assume that everybody who's doing talent acquisitions end up being an IT or a tech worker. That's not the case, right? I mean, if you look at public sector, retail, and various other industries, they have this need for hiring people quickly, contingent workforce that they need for short periods of time. You have the holiday season coming up, so how can I hire 10,000, 20,000 more people to fill certain positions which are temporary in nature? I think we are underestimating the value that it provides by having something like a verifiable credential, where you are reducing the time it takes to hire a temporary workforce, right? Again, a lot of it does not have to be always elaborate. So if you have everything on a network where self-sovereignty, like Glenn mentioned, is absolutely important. That's one of the things I underscore is that you own your data, not the company or not the employer. But imagine how quickly you are able to hire people of the right caliber when you want to fill in temporary positions. So that's definitely a kind of a good consequence of having this on the chain and reducing the time it takes to hire people. Especially and we have this big need. I talked about mass hiring earlier. That's a place where there are a lot of industries that want seasonal workforces, retail, especially around the holiday season, they want to fill in the position. And this could be a really good solution for them to not try to boil the ocean, not try to figure it out, but again, have the trust in the process established. I think that's the key thing that I think would be a good thing to work on. So that's one aspect where people are seeing the value of verified credentials on the blockchain. The second thing that I have noticed, and maybe this is a newer trend, if you think about what AI has also done is it has been a massive productivity booster. So now you have a lot of single member people running their own companies. You have single member LLCs. A single individual is now able to do the work of 10 people. A lot of times it's not just about the individual, but there were some companies who are working to say now we have to kind of do background verification on whether the company is allowed to work in this area. So there are a lot of legal requirements and compliance that you have to go through, not just for that individual, but just because that individual is actually representing a company also. So something can be done on for the company, for example, and the scope kind of starts to expand. And that's an interesting area. I had not thought about it as, kind of verifying companies or doing this kind of B2B verifications is also possible. But again, that's the changing world order, right? I think earlier it was limited to hiring people full-time contingent. Now it could be, maybe it's a one-person company that you want to then verify very quickly and get on board. So I think overall, the point I would definitely like to underscore is that there's a need to have a solution. Again, that has to be independent and everybody wants to have trust in the process. And that's the part that I think all of us collectively here are trying to establish is that, this is not like one company or one database that's owned for certain purposes. It's kind of sitting outside and it's the issuer and the person who's controlling it who are really the owners and they have the control of the data. And that's a good point to highlight in the wake of concerns around privacy and who owns the ownership of the data.
And I'd
Maybe
like to,
building on that seed is not only the ownership to own it as a concept of just it's my data, but it's creating more fluidity in the marketplace. Therefore, because I own my data, I'm able to be candidates to more opportunities within my organizations or even beyond my organizations in the marketplace. So it's this empowerment because of the power of data and my credentials and the ability to connect with AI-powered system that is going to make good use of this data because they trust it, is giving much more opportunities for both organizations and individuals.
and I just want to build on something you said earlier, Jean-Marc, in two concepts. One, you were talking about, looking far into the future. I think, when you look at 200 years of the existence or 300 years of the existence of a resume has been focused into one-page, two-page document because an individual, a human being, a recruiter, reads that. Now, research shows in a few seconds, right, takes in a minimum amount of information, which is all storytelling, and based on that decides to put it in the pile to continue or not. In an AI-driven world, we're not limited to 2 or 3 pages of a CV. An AI machines actually would prefer hundreds of facts over a small number of facts, right? To build their models and to evaluate individuals versus each other. And so instead of thinking about I'm constantly writing a 2-page document to represent a complete person who I am, let's start thinking about what it looks like when we collect verifiable information, facts and truth about me from school, through my entire career, all kinds of facts that are directly related to my work experiences and tasks and assignments and successes and recognitions, and maybe facts that are less connected directly, but maybe will represent in models built by by machine learning, things that are value. For instance, maybe if I was the captain of the rowing team in college and I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning in the freezing cold, morning after morning, that represents or it models my discipline and my tenacity and says something about my personality, right? So a transition from a human-driven two-page resume to an AI interpreted and modeled hundreds of facts of data is a very different world to consider. So that was one thought. And the other is we didn't talk a lot, but AI builds its models based on data, right? And one of the challenges we're seeing in AI is when AI is built on data that is skewed or already has built into it biases, right? Or that it's using data that it wasn't necessarily permitted to use, or individuals don't even know that it's being based on when it's modeling its models, is a challenge. And with verifiable credentials, we can work toward a world where AI is being trained and their models are being developed on trusted data, which has less bias built into it and has been approved by the individuals to be used or anonymized completely for the use of modeling. So the modeling of the tools themselves and building out the AI way of approaching the data can be very much affected by verifiable credentials. So it sounds great, lots of things we can do, but it's not easy, right? I mean, Jean-Marc and Glenn, you two have been engaged with Velocity for a while. Sid, I know you're relatively new, but SAP has been a founding member of the Velocity Network. So for a few years, we've been working toward adopting verifiable credentials, and it's not getting picked up in the speed that AI, overnight, we all were exposed to ChatGPT and learned about this AI world. So there are challenges. How do you see the challenges to adoption, and what can we do to move this faster, given that AI is moving so fast and the challenges of AI are growing? How do we drive the adoption of verifiable credentials faster? Jean-Marc, maybe you start?
Yes, a number of ideas came to my mind. First, the point that you made earlier that AI enables the access to my whole life and everything that happened in my life. Some people may not like it. I mean, there is an issue of maybe I was not the captain of the rowing team. Maybe I did compete, but I didn't win. And what happened there? And do I want people to know about that? Which provides one of the challenges, the challenge of ethics. For instance, there is more and more movement about something called passive assessment. Therefore, an organization will be able to go to your LinkedIn or other social media account and everything that you have published, all your life, which is a public life, and then based on that, maybe based on bias model, draw conclusion of what is your personalities and your capabilities. So unless there is verified credential that I, or as an individual, I make available to whoever I want to be hired by, there are risks also linked to that. So I think there's the ethical, who controls the data and what is being done with the data, and the quality of the AI doing the analysis, even if it is informed by a verifiable credential, is a major issue. I have those ideas, but I will let Sid and Glenn provide them.
Glenn, thoughts about sort of the challenges of adoption?
Yeah, so I'll take a slightly different angle and just look at the fact that this type of a setup is essentially a multi-sided network, right? So you have employers, you have credential issuers, you have candidates, and they're all participating to try to find value in this network. And when you're dealing with a multi-sided network, for that to be impactful and successful, you have to have a critical mass of users on all sides. That's it's not easy to achieve that. It's almost like trying to achieve a perfect storm. Employers have to see enough candidates with verifiable credentials to justify using them, and candidates need assurances that if they have the verified credentials, that companies are actually going to use them and it could improve their prospects. And then credential issuers, even like educational institutions, they're going to have to be willing to issue and maintain these records. So that's one of the challenges that I see, in addition to the one that was mentioned just before, is just the multi-sided network element of what we're trying to achieve here.
Any solutions on solving that?
I don't have a silver bullet yet, otherwise we would have achieved it. But I do have some closing thoughts that I can certainly add. Yeah.
Great. So Sid, the challenge?
Yeah, I think the way I look at when I talk to a lot of customers, like everybody's thinking through a fire hose when it comes to AI. So when you bring in an additional element of this kind of a blockchain-based network, people don't have the, kind of the bandwidth to even absorb and what that means. I think that's just the reality of how things are being done. Also, what we are discussing here is slightly longer term. It'll take a little bit of an effort to kind of point Glenn's, point he made around you need to have enough critical mass for this to gain traction and momentum. And I think people or companies and managers and individuals and leadership, they are more focused on the here and now, saying, how can I just make sure that people don't go ahead and start doing things on ChatGPT or Claude that they're not supposed to? So how can I lock it down, kind of make sure that the internal tools are not like thousands of bots that everybody has and all that. So they're trying to control that. So we are still very much in the picks and shovels era of this journey. And what we're talking about is really a spaceship that, people have to kind of come to terms with it and say, yeah, we are ready to take that leap and do that. So I think it's just the nature of how fast things are moving and bringing this additional element and what that would mean. The other very practical thing to think about is that because there is a bit of an uncertainty when it comes to AI governance and what governments are going to mandate in terms of how AI gets regulated or not regulated, that is actually bringing a lot of question mark in terms of the adoption of a lot of these things within the company. So they are actually observing that and saying, let's first understand exactly what the AI Act means for us. Do we need to change certain things? So it's not about the merits or demerits of the network and what it offered, but it's more in terms of what I see is what is the most pressing and urgent need today. And some of this happens to be that I need to make sure that whatever I'm doing is, I don't get into trouble. I don't get into copyright issues. I don't get into privacy issues. People don't accidentally leak out confidential information outwards. And then in a process, what they're then doing is they're working with companies and with solutions where that they know that they are at least hardened for enterprise use and all that. So I think that is just the nature that's happening, and I think it's a bridge that is not too far. We can still make the case saying, look at the macro view. Like today, you're dealing with these things, but what if you were to do this at scale? And what about this? What about that? And that's where we can make a lot more compelling case when we have everybody's mind and ears kind of paying attention to what the real bigger problem would be when you have millions of people applying potentially for jobs as opposed to like thousands of people and all that. So I think that's something to consider, just the timeliness and the nature of regulation and what governments are working on.
Marvelous. So as we wrap up, so we've talked about how AI is impacting our world. We've seen that there are some new challenges that AI is bringing with all its benefits, and we've talked about verifiable credentials addressing quite a few of those challenges, but also having some of its own early adoption challenges to get to mass usage. As we wrap up, I'd love your final thoughts on what anyone listening to this or watching this webinar can do in this situation, to advance this, to take advantage of verifiable credentials, to think about how these worlds come together and advance the work in their organization around this. Glenn?
I would say there's two main things from my perspective. There's more, but the two main ones that I want to hit on right now is that I think people should pilot and experiment. It's incredibly important to not wait for perfection. Everyone is capable of initiating small scale pilots using verifiable credentials and AI in the hiring process. And that would allow you to discover the challenges and the opportunities firsthand, makes it real, and generate some internal case studies and learning experiences. This could be both for hiring, but it can also be for internal mobility. There's a lot of interesting use cases there as well for verifiable credentials. And then the second one would be around education and just preparing your teams. You have to invest in educating your talent acquisition and HR teams just around the safe and responsible use of AI and verifiable credentials. And you have to equip them with the knowledge and the skills to be able to use these types of things ethically and effectively, so that you can be in a position to lead in a world that's obviously increasingly AI enhanced. I sincerely believe that the future definitely involves, verifiable credentials.
Thank you. And Sid?
Yeah, just to add on to Glenn's point, I think I would say the same, start a pilot. I would actually narrow the problem statement down to something even more kind of actionable. I would say, don't solve for the world, solve for one specific niche, one specific industry, one specific use case for the pilot. So if you can't solve it for that, you cannot solve it for the world. A lot of times we get caught up in the technology thinking, it has to work for everybody. So that's where the kind of a finer point around, yeah, don't aim for perfection, but at the same time, don't make it too generic. Like solve it for the need, for a specific use case. And there are quite a few. Again, like I mentioned, public sector has a lot of use cases. Retail has, healthcare has. So depending on what niche and industry you're in, you will be able to identify and run this pilot effectively. My second call to action would be like if you are a solopreneur or if you're a company, doing not just talent acquisition, but like let's take, for example, background checks. That's an easy thing to actually look at to say the last mile of background checks is always manual and it gets tedious. So is there a return on investment? Can you make a business case out of using this pilot to do background verifications for candidate that essentially will lead to better talent acquisition pipelines and reduce time to hire? That's an example that is more actionable as well. So I would say if you're in these two categories, do a pilot and then focus on the problem. And if you need more, all of us are here. You can always reach out to us. Obviously, Ethan is there to provide more guidance on it, but there's no better way to start than to try it out.
And Mark, action items or direction recommendations?
Yes, I agree with Glenn and Sid in trying it. I mean, I spent my two last weekends working a co-pilot on Microsoft AI Studio. And I'm not a tech person, but I was trying to say, how can I get data, take a large language model, a ChatGPT type of engine, and get to some type of outcome? And it is possible. It is not that easy, but it is possible. And by doing that, it's giving me an idea of how can I do with my teams or the broader organization or our clients to really harness the full power of AI in the context of solid data and robust data. I would say a few additional comments. One is we are getting into an era where data will be the new gold or the new oil. Therefore, it will be the war for data, clean data, not only data generated by AI, but data which is proprietary and unique and that you can really get insight out of it. And the earlier people are getting in charge of their own data, maybe on our own career life or our organizational data for talent acquisition and others, the greater competitive advantage they will get. If you wake up too late and your competitors have the best data, then suddenly you cannot get the best talent or you cannot do the best task leveraging the data that you have. So be clear about where is the data, what is valuable data, how you protect it, and how you turn it and monetize it into a competitive advantage. The other challenge is a challenge of understanding the power of AI. I see many people talking about AI without having gone somehow deep into what is AI, and therefore why is the value of clean, verified, trustworthy data is important. Since many people talk about AI as a big concept or based on their experience with ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini, but there is a governance about AI. There is a ethical code of conduct that are critical. There is a platform and way you store the data to access it and make it available to everyone. And then how you treat the data in a way which is respectful of privacy as well as conducive of economic value. This is not totally easy. And I think that people need to learn how to leverage the value of data for a really AI for good, which I think is the purpose here. So those are some ideas I think we're moving forward.
Marvelous. Well, thank you very much. I want to just add to all your wonderful thoughts and recommendations that these technologies, these standards, these capabilities are available. And just like AI suddenly came into all of our lives and exploded, and you said we're all drinking through the fire hose. I think we're all big believers that verifiable credentials will follow as digital identity becomes more common. We're all reading about mobile driver license on our phones and having our passports as digital assets, but also our education, employment licenses, skills, and how these things all fit together. It's inevitable. It's a question of when, how quickly, and who will be those who take advantage of these new technologies to empower individuals, create opportunities, and grow businesses. We're inviting you all to visit the Velocity Network Foundation website to learn more, or just spend time learning more about verifiable credentials in general. Thank you, gentlemen. I look forward to seeing you in a future episode.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.